Hello and thanks for joining us on State of the Nation. I'm Benga Aborowa. Our guest today needs no introduction. He is son of Nigeria's biggest cultural and musical exports, Fela Kuti. Ladies and gentlemen, please, I would like to introduce my guest today, Seun Kuti, leader of the Egypt 80 band, whom he inherited from his father at the age of 15. Yeah. Seun, it's a pleasure to have you join us today.
Yeah, man. Good to see you again. Happy New Year, bro.
Happy New Year. Good to see you. What's your impression of Ghana? What are they doing that we can do, to bring the African diaspora back home?
I think, the Ghanaian president is doing the Oni of Ife style,
Okay.
There's a joke in Ghana that there's more access to the Ghanaian president than a football pitch. So I think that is helping. These celebrities come from America and they meet the president of Ghana who welcomes them
with open arms.
Yeah. And they're also pitching, this is their year of the return thing, like land, opportunities, businesses for our cousins in the diaspora who want to come back. I think that is why so many, and there's a huge support. The bureaucracy, the red tape is not as intense as here.
They make it easier for them.
For things to happen.
What's the importance of the African diaspora and how can they connect with those of us here in the motherland? How could we make this a synergy lead us into more progress as a people?
Well, I think our diaspora is very important in terms of our own cultural and economic advantage as African people, being able to have a foothold globally, at least in the global West, where millions of Africans were forcefully taken to, But one thing I always like to point out is we cannot interact, we cannot interact as African people with the guidelines of white supremacy. This experiment has been done before. I always tell people to check what happened in Liberia, Sierra Leone, where we had done the Back to Africa movement. This is not new.
Yeah.
And the relationship that developed between the Africans and the African Americans then.
So they just adopted the plantation model and used it on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we don't want that. I want us to have a situation where Africans and our cousins in the diaspora are able to meet each other to uplift one another, under a socialist, Pan-Africanist guideline, for the betterment of both. I don't want it to be a case where we both look for ways to exploit one another. I don't think that will work.
Okay.
Because it's been done before and it didn't work. So I think for us as Africans, what we need to look at is how we can develop governments that also take the diaspora into consideration. For instance, it's a shame that anything happens to African Americans and no African government says anything. And also that there are no African government investments in African communities globally. Imagine there was a Bank of Africa in African communities in Brazil, in America, in the UK, in France. What kind of benefits will we gain as African countries from being able to tap into these economies? One. Two, what kind of cultural and also, how would I put it, nationalist ideas will begin to foster in the minds of our cousins.
And exchanges.
Yeah, when we're able to invest in their own economic development.
And they feel a connection.
Yeah, that's the best way. In this world today, nothing builds a connection more than economic interest.
And music too. Music is a weapon, and you've done more amazing job than any Nigerian ambassador would have done. It's a big the musical export from Africa has helped to foster that relationship and establish a connection. Now let's get into politics. In a few weeks' time, Nigerians will be going to the polls. You're pro tem chairman of the Movement of the People. You're very political. Your music is political. Your father's music is political. And you were seeking registration with the INEC. What's the status of that?
Well, what I've learned in this process is that the Nigerian electoral process is very elitist. It's created so that poor people, especially poor communities, it's not even really poor people. What they are afraid of, in my own studying of the setup, that what they are afraid of is that poor communities should start representing themselves. So it's impossible for you in Nigeria, for example, to create a political platform for your community where people are only interested in your own development and advancement and your culture and things like that.
What are the obstacles to that? What
they propose is that every party must be national in scope. So imagine the resources that goes into developing a national party.
But I've seen some very obscure parties. I saw I saw a Boot party. No shade to Boot party, but I mean,
trust me,
they have a national spread.
In Nigeria, that party, as little as you look at, has some big men behind it. There's no party that is just standing willy-nilly in this country. I think MOP were the first grassroots party without any big man as a financier or, angel investor, as they say. But we've secured most of the things we're securing. We are in the process of training our state reps.
So it's an ongoing process.
Yes, it's an ongoing process, man. It's not something you just, as Karl Marx said, political parties are the highest level of human organization. That man did not lie.
He did. Now, what are your thoughts as we...
Desire to rescue them. Only Nigerian people can save Nigeria. The Nigerian president can't save Nigeria. None of that. What Nigerians don't understand is the issue of class. We need to become more, how do I put it, educated in class interests and class struggles. We as Nigerian people, we've never really been orientated towards that. Our education completely, primary, secondary school, you can go to 12 years of education. Even some university people have never had, the 10 class struggle. Graduates, they don't understand, those things. We've been programmed, both working class and poor, to think that we are rich men in waiting. We are all special children of Allah and God, and our miracle for our billions is just around the corner next week. And while we wait for this, every generation, 95, 96% of us, fall back into poverty. Even the World Bank itself has said that you have a greater chance of winning the lottery than dying above the class you are born in, So that for me is what Nigerians need to understand looking at any elections. How are our interests, what are being done about our interests? And nobody really is doing anything about the interests of Nigerian people. Reading the manifesto of the mainstream candidates, as I said, mainstream, not a candidate like Showore, who is not mainstream, I have to mention that. It's important. But the rest mainstream candidates, what they're proposing is what I call a perfection of oppression. The kind of oppression where the middle class stop complaining. Because right now you're all complaining, all the professionals. And it's making it hard for them because you guys kind of have a voice. And from complaining, you can become more politicized and more radical and start striking and boycotting. They don't want you to get there. They are trying to placate you, with
so where do you think we can push that reset button? Because the people are so downtrodden. It's almost like, but I won't give the Nigerian political class that much credit for thinking it's deliberate. They're not just doing their jobs to keep the people where they are.
I think it's actually deliberate. It's well planned. That's another thing. We don't how would I put it? We don't associate our ruling class with intelligence. That's a big mistake. Because these people, even the ones among them that are not intelligent, can afford to buy it. It's true. And they do buy it. When it comes to that level, when they know they don't know. If you look at the leaked tapes of Atiku and his special
purpose vehicle.
Special purpose vehicle, I want to buy one of those. God damn. Anyway, so if you see how he operates, when he was talking, the ones they can't do, they employ people that can do it. And this is where the Nigerian professionals come into play. As I said, that's why they have to create a perfection of oppression, where the Nigerian professionals see it as their own, because they are believing that they are members of this class and one day they will enter,
it will be their turn.
So they continually use their talent to entrench the powers of our elites, the corrupt practices, through corrupt practices and nepotism. I mean, without the Nigerian professional, how can these special purpose vehicles move? So this is the issue, and this is why the Nigerian people continually vote for them, because after all is said and done, many people in the banks are happy to launder money than create schemes to empower small and medium-sized businesses. Many people in the construction business would rather, siphon from contracts and build the houses of billionaires than dream up public housing schemes, where houses would go for cheap to the poorest of Nigerians. Many of the doctors would rather have their private practices, or even to London to become doctors than think about the healthcare of Nigerian people. So that's why everybody will continue to scream Peter Obi, Atiku, or Ashiwaju, because they guarantee the continuation of this
that system. Now let's x-ray the ordinary Nigerian. There's a school of thought that says, the people deserve the government they have. That these politicians didn't fall from Mars. They are human beings, like they attended Nigerian institutions and all of that. So if they continue to take that 100 naira, that 1,000, 5,000...
It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the professionals of Nigeria are the problem. It is not the poor people that are taking 1,500. You see, the reason why they take this money is because by the time it's time to vote, it's already too late. The professionals of Nigeria have already...
reduced their options.
No, not reduced their options. They've already raised our oppressors to the level of demigod.
Saviors, messiahs.
They are demigods. The demagoguery of these men, by the Nigerian professionals, as I said. You see, the journalist has already taken his own money to write a story. Right? The banker has already taken his own money to launder. Right? The TV broadcaster has taken his own money to broadcast. So has radio. Every professional in Nigeria...
But are you saying that the ordinary man doesn't have the agency to decide what is good for him?
By the time he gets to his own turn to take 1,000, people start complaining. But everybody has taken their share.
I get your point.
You understand? Everybody has taken their own share. The lawyer has taken his own share to defend a corruption case. The journalist has taken his own share to report lie and fake news to support the same politician.
Or look the other way.
Everybody has taken, the lecturers has taken money to teach his own nonsense to the students in universities. Everybody has taken their own share, but as soon as it gets to the poor people, then that's where there's a problem. Why are you taking 1,000? Why are you taking 500? Why are you taking millions to entrench this system? You understand? So for me, the issue is not the poor man that sells his vote. It's when the Nigerian professionals stop aligning themselves with the oppressor. You see, if we expose them as journalists, telling people the truth of who these people are non-stop, if the lawyers refuse and the judges in courts do their jobs and prosecute, the police do their investigations and prosecute, if we as professionals of Nigeria do our job, there will be no floor for them they will have no footing to stand on to go and meet the people with 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever. They'll have been completely decimated before they get to the polls. The people will already see them for what they are. The stigma on them will even make sure that children will be stoning them on the streets instead of chasing them and hailing them. We are the ones that raise them to build their houses, drive their car, fix their car, do everything to put them as, the examples of society. This is what we have to we sing songs to praise these men. God, please let me be like Dangote. God, please let me be like
Talking, I'm so happy you mentioned it. Talking about songs.
We do the music, we praise them, we praise them in church, we do everything, and then suddenly we expect the common Nigerian to suddenly just hit him suddenly at the polls. This is an impossibility.
I'm happy you mentioned songs. You've talked about my constituency, and I won't defend them.
Yes.
Yeah, there are journalists that are working against the interest
majority
of the common
of
man.
Journalists.
And you are cut from a different cloth. Your grandmother from a line of activists. As a musician, how do you believe that arts can be leveraged to address the various challenges facing the country? And I mean, artistic license, everybody can sing struggle music.
Yeah.
But what can they do? Because Pusha T, that talks about drugs all the time, in the height of Black Lives Matter, it did a song highlighting oppression against black people in America. So where can our brothers and sisters?
But that is still tokenism. I'm not trying to tell Nigerian artists to use
just
their
make
talents of tokenism to their people. We have to decide, as Thomas Sankara said, is that we have champagne for a few or clean water for everybody. And this is really a question that Africans haven't really answered. Even the Africans without clean water are dreaming of drinking champagne. They are not dreaming of the practical means to get clean water. And this still boils down to the fact that we paint a picture that negates their existence. Both musicians and everybody is complicit in this. Yeah, music definitely has a huge power because it's something that grabs the psyche of the consumer. Music is kind of spiritual in that sense.
It's a weapon.
It can become like a mantra. Your favorite song, even when you're not listening to it, you are singing it by yourself. It's something that actually shifts your consciousness in a way that a lot of art forms can't, But that being said, we must not put all the pressures of changing society on musicians and artists. This is something that, I'm going to say this again, the professional class of the world, to negate their own responsibility, loves to do. Oh, the artist should do more. So should the engineer.
Or their distraction. Yeah.
So should the engineer. So should the accountant. So should the lawyer. So should the teachers. So should the lecturers. And so should the civil servant, and so on and so forth. We all, as professionals, have the power to bring change to our society.
I noticed something in your Instagram live videos that you do. You always try to make the people wake up to the reality of life and not being distracted by mundane things of life. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here. We like football, we like the good things of life, but you also highlighted something: alcohol, aphrodisiac brands, things that are numbing the consciousness. Religion are the things that are, they're in the forefront. Big Brother and all these things. Every individual has a right to do whatever they want, but it's almost like it's being forced. So how can Nigeria's young population become less distracted and more politically engaged? If you listen to radio for 5 minutes, an ad for a betting company will pop up. Yes.
We live in a society where our elites are outside of the society that they create. So let me explain. When I say they're outside of the society, meaning that they are not affected by the decisions that they make. They don't have to use the infrastructures that they create. They create bad airports, they take private jets. They create bad hospitals, they go up, they take private hospitals or go abroad for international care. Create bad schools, they send their children somewhere else. So for them, Nigeria has always been, and this is something that we have to understand, and that's why we must be historical people. I don't like people that say, I don't like history. History is in the past. Well, you learned to read in the past. You learned to walk in the past. Can you abandon those things?
Exactly.
How will you be today if you suddenly say, I learned how to walk in the past. Everything in the past, if you abandon your past, you suddenly become a child. A childlike, not a child. You be an adult that's a childlike.
Yes.
Because it means all the things you've learned, all the skills you've acquired, everything is in the past. So let it go with the past, right? Anybody that is not historical is a child. That is how it is, a child in the world. And we are not historical, mainly also because we are programmed not to be. So we do not understand the role that the so-called elite in Africa have always played. Africa for them is an exchange, has always been a means to exchange. In this, my father's street, let me see, there's a hotel, but there's no club, but there's this museum, which kind of has a club, bar upstairs.
No,
on my street,
there's two houses.
There's a bar. Yes. Okay, exactly. So on my street, there are about 4 hotels, 2 clubs. On Island Avenue, on every street, on every street in Lagos, there's almost a hotel, nightclub. So I want people to stop blaming the victim. Big Brother is where it is because of the investment that is put on it. And it is designed by certain people to be that way. The same people that designed Big Brother could have designed it to be a show where young people discuss the issues of the country and come up with solutions. And other young people or viewers can vote on the best solution. I mean, from there, that means people are going from entertainment to solutions and national development. They're investing in solutions for national development. So the same people that designed it, that refused to design it that way, and then the same people that invest in the clubs and invest in the hotels, and if these same people invested in libraries the way they invested in hotels, there'll be a library on every street.
Very true.
That means they're investing in knowledge and national development. For them, it's a different thing. They want to extract. They want to create the avenues to extract. So this is all young people have to engage with. It's not as if they are building libraries and young people are refusing to go. It's not as if they are creating educational centers, youth centers, sports centers, community centers, and young people are refusing to engage. Except you just want young people to not be young anymore, to sit down in their house all day, and not experience their society. Then you can blame them for engaging with what is put in front of them. You understand? The issue with Nigeria, I will say it again, is the professional adults who, instead of demanding the right country, decide to behave like children, decide not to grow up, want to do the latest dance, want to wear the best clothes like children, want to also go to the nightclubs with the children, want to also do what kids are supposed to be doing, not understanding that we are grown-ups.
So how do we change that narrative?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not in the business of also telling people what to do. No, it's serious. I'm serious. It's not the kids. It's the adults refusing to grow up. Commissioners, governors are doing TikTok challenge. George Weah, I'm not joking. He was doing Buga challenge on TikTok. Do you think there are not challenges in America for Joe Biden to engage with? But that will be the day anybody will lose any kind of respect for him. In a country with all the problems you are facing, you have time. They'll be watching, going to club, party. Look at the Oni of Ife. You can't do a party without him being there. He's there.
Welcome to the traditional.
Front and center.
Welcome to the traditional rulers.
This is the issue with Africa. Is not young people being young. All this youth noise. You're lying. Youth is not an ideology. Youth is a demographic. It's not an ideology. Youth has never made anything happen. Show me a country that was built by young people. Show me. Every nation is built by the strength of the young and the experience of the old. Where the old is negating their experience and their responsibility to put pressure on the youth to decide the course of the country. This is another travesty that we are perpetuating on young people in this country. So, I mean, until we are really ready to look in the mirror and tell ourselves the truth, it is the older generation, the professionals, who are refusing to grow up. That is the problem here, not young people being young.
Now, Seun, the high levels of poverty and inequality in Nigeria have been a long-standing problem. People are going into all sorts, and society is losing its moral compass. How best do you think we can address this issue of poverty? Because some people, we're not saints.
But poverty is manufactured.
There's been an ongoing debate on social
poverty
media.
Poverty is not natural.
Some people, actors and this, they're doing all sorts of things. People are doing Yahoo. There's so much pressure to keep up with the Joneses. Is it our business to point fingers, or you just look the other way? How do you address this issue of poverty and the desperation to just keep up with?
But poverty is manufactured.
Yes.
Poverty is manufactured. It's not natural. The resources of the earth is enough for everybody to live comfortably. I'm not saying poor. People can be poor. What I'm saying here is poverty. In Europe and America, there are poor people everywhere. And I even have poor friends. But I would say I don't know anybody living in poverty, But they are. A majority of us are, as African people, living in poverty. And that's where there's a problem, Now, we continue to talk about people that don't have that still, But how about people that have and still hold Indomie and Gary and things like that, giving us COVID palliatives? You're a billionaire, but you still steal thousands and millions. So, I mean, the issue of crime in Africa has not really been addressed. We can't really address crime and criminality in Africa until we create some kind of social stability for the people. Many so-called people are doing crime because there's nothing else to do. Who am I to sit on my high horse, Fela's son, that grew up with privilege, start pointing finger, hey, don't do this, don't commit that, don't sell this, come on, why are you?
Don't sleep with this.
I'll prefer you not to. You understand? I honestly prefer people not to fall into the trap set by the elites, which is poverty, which removes your dignity and makes you susceptible to dangerous ideas so that you can secure some comfort for yourself. I mean, even in the higher echelons of Nigerian society, this mentality doesn't totally dissipate. It's not somebody that built a building in Ikoyi with a 20-story building with material for 4-story building.
That's poverty.
And this person is a billionaire.
And people died.
Scores of people died. You understand? But this is seen as some kind of benevolent crime. Some kind of benign crime. It's just. But how many buildings have fallen in Lagos in the past year? How many people have they put in charge of management of huge resources and have mismanaged it? Even though their remuneration was impressive and massive and they live amazing lives. So we live in a crimogenic society.
Now, let me take you outside Africa for a bit. There's no way we'll have this conversation and not talk about the geopolitical machinations of East versus West and how Africa is caught up in the middle. Russia-Ukraine war. American ambassador to United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, suggested that, Africans should pick a side. You cannot hang on the fence. Hanging on the fence means you're supporting Russia. What do you make of this? African countries do have the agency to decide who they want to support and their allegiance and who they want to do business with. What should be our position as Africans when these guys are fighting themselves? Because we're caught up in the crosshairs.
Well, I think one of the first things that Africans should say is that, we want to pick the side where there are no colonialists.
It should be our default setting.
That should be our default settings, any side with a colonialist past, we are not picking you. This should be our default setting, Any past, anybody with imperialist second setting, anybody with imperialist interest, we are not picking you, But that's not the way our leaders speak, and that's not the way the world works. Majority of Africa is still foreign owned. I say to people, one of the reasons why Nigerians are so poor is because 74% of our economy, I don't know if it's increased now or reduced, but in 2013, about 74% of our economy was under foreign control. I mean, from telecommunications, to oil, to whatever.
Yeah, because we're always drumming the mantra of foreign investment.
Foreign investment. So what is left for us as Nigerians? Over 70% of our arable land is used to grow cash crops, and we complain about the rising cost of food. Why won't food be expensive? When instead of us to feed ourselves with our land, we're using it to grow crops that people will use in their industries abroad, while our people are going hungry, can't afford food. One bag of rice is more than minimum wage. What is the staple diet of the poor Nigerian family? And you complain about crime and all of that. So for me, these things are all intertwined. We as African people cannot continue to live our lives as some sort of footrest for some other people's existence. America, being less than 10% of the world's population, consumes 25% of the world resources. Scientists have said we would need about 4.2 Earths, not one Earth. We need 4.2 Earths. 1, 2, 3, 4 Earths, 4 planets for everybody in the world to live like an American.
Wow. So
definitely this American dream is not sustainable for the world. It's not a sustainable model. It's a dream where people are, okay, 80% of the world, now listen to this, 80% of the world is hungry.
Yes.
The West threw away about $1 trillion worth of food last year.
It's insane.
And 80% of the world cannot eat. So this model
Doesn't work.
can really not be sustained. Pet care. This is one thing I like to point out to Africans. Or if I was there when this woman was speaking, I said, what model do you want us to support? You want us to support Ukraine, or we are supporting Russia? You support Ukraine, which we are supporting America. Whereas America has imposed a system on Africans. We have our country's budget. Nigeria's budget is what? $40 billion a year. The pet food industry in America alone is what's about 67 billion.
Okay, that's quite humbling.
So the food of dogs and cats in America, they spend more on feeding their cats and dogs than our country spends on our healthcare, our military, our transport, our education. You understand? Which means that the feeding of the American pets in the global order has been made to be more important than the life of all Nigerian people. You understand what I'm saying?
Giant of Africa.
I've not added pet health. This is the pet food industry. I've not added pet grooming. I've not added pet health care, pet insurance, just their food. This is only America. I've not added Canada, France, UK, Germany, Holland. If we were to add all that, the market for pet food in all these countries, it would dwarf the entire African national budget for all African countries.
It's quite humbling.
So, what side is anybody telling us to pick where you have already put us beneath your pets, beneath your animals? Until we have African leaders who are willing to pick African side, who are willing to see that this is a travesty, not only of economics, but of humanity. That in some parts of this world, animals live better than the entire populations of certain countries. So we are not about picking sides. I don't care about what side is which, What I care about is restoring the dignity of African people so we live better than the pets of America.
Quite humbling. Now, let's look at Nigerian students. It's a few weeks to the elections and they're going to be in session because ASU has been striking for a long time and millions of Nigerian students will be disenfranchised. Was it deliberate? What can they do to address this situation? Or should schools say, look, for this electioneering period, students go home so you can vote?
Election is on Saturday now.
Yes.
Come, go and vote. Travel. Take a trip.
There are no lectures on Saturday.
Exactly. Take the trip. Take the weekend trip. I know you take weekend trip for parties. I know for a fact.
Yeah.
So take the trip back home to vote. Finish. You are all children of sacrifice. No African should think anything good is going to come to us Africans in our comfort zone. As Africans, this is what they also want you to forget. That, like I was saying to a Nigerian friend who is a professional in the bank, and he was saying to me, so what do you want me to do? I work really hard to get to where I am in this bank. You want me to lose my job doing these things you are saying? I said, because you don't understand how you were able to get into the bank in the first place. Even Krumah was saying, I worked so hard to get to this my level. I went to Lincoln University to be this educated that I am. And if I stand up for you today, I will lose all my privileges. Do you think Africans will even be allowed to walk on the streets? For us to vote as African people, people have to die. We must always remember that when we want to make this our selfish decisions. As an African person, for you to get a job in any of these law firms, whatever you are working today, somebody died. In fact, not somebody, plenty people.
Millions. Yeah.
And they knew they were going to die. They decided to die so that you can enter the office.
They were pioneers. For
you to go to school, we're the only group in this world that were not invited to the table for anything. The Asians at some point after oppression, they were invited in.
Even the partitioning of Africa in the Berlin Conference, not a single African was there, and they divided the continent amongst themselves.
To even make decisions in our own country, struggle. People don't understand what colonialism is. It's so benign that nobody teaches you the history. Nigeria gained independence 1st of October 1960, that's the beginning of history.
And Lord Lugard.
Yeah, Lord Lugard, 1914, amalgamation. Nobody tells you the lived experience of your ancestors under colonialism. The beating, the way they killed us like fowls, the whipping, the dehumanization, and for people to...
You have a song, Last Revolutionary. It's one of my favorite songs. You talk about Dioma, recognize. The importance of recognizing the sacrifices of our ancestors. You mentioned Nkrumah, you mentioned, so many people. Why is it important for us to understand our history? And when do we start looking at fellow black people? Because I tell you, if somebody dies in Hollywood, look at your status. It's RIP, somebody you didn't even know, that didn't know you exist. How many Nigerians or Africans they will probably mention the top 11 of Arsenal Football Club or the Kardashian family. But ask them about Sekou Toure,
but this is all
Nkrumah,
scripted.
Sankara.
But it's scripted. It's scripted. And I was coming to that point. So they didn't want us to know that we are children of these people. Because if we know these people and the sacrifice they gave to us, maybe we'll operate differently in these spaces that we have been able to, that they've allowed us enter due to their sacrifice. You understand? And maybe that would inspire us differently, So that's why you can look at the whole of Lagos and there's no Nkrumah Street, for example. No Sankara, no Boulevard, nothing. So that you are detached.
Who are these people?
You're completely detached from yourself. You move thinking you are here just willy-nilly. You think it's by protest that you became free. You don't know it is by struggle. You don't know it is by sacrifice. So you are locked in this cycle of futile protests, that doesn't really give us much in terms of institutional advancement, but changes. We get some tokenism, like NSAS. People say, NSAS did not achieve anything. I say, that's a lie. The fact that me have not paid toll gates since NSAS
it's a lot.
is something for me, but it's a token.
Are not there anymore.
And it's a token. SARS still exists. Let's also believe. Let's not spread that lie. SARS exists. They're everywhere, still operating, doing what they do. And but the lie that it did not achieve anything, whereas everybody is passing toll gate without paying, free for 3 years. People living on the island must have saved millions, but it's still tokenism. But we must organize for institutional. Yes, we must organize for institutional changes to happen, and this only happens through sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Through dedication. So this is what is detached. And when you don't, how many programs talk about this? How many times do they teach about these people in our schools? You can leave secondary school without hearing the name Sankara, Lumumba, Sekou Toure, and all these Bembela, and the great Pan-Africanists, Nasser, that stood for us to be where we are today. We have to learn from these people from European rhetoric about them.
Shouldn't be. Now, there's this ongoing debate about, Africa's seat at the United Nations Security Council. Your father, as far back as the late 70s, had a song, Beast of No Nation. In that song, he said, waiting unite inside United Nations. The mathematics don't add up. How can you have a group of people with veto power? So where do you fall in this debate on Africa's place in the United Nations Security Council? Which African country deserves that membership space? Or
what is Africa's position? What is Africa's position in the African Union? What is the question we should ask? What is Africa's position in the African Development Bank? These so-called institutions that are African first, do Africans control them? Do Africans fund them? Who built the AU headquarters? We should ask ourselves this question before we go and ask who should sit down in United, long, that one is even too far.
New York.
The one that is our own, that is supposed to be our own, who is running it? Are we running that one? Before you want to go around Security Council. So under this African situation, an African seat is nothing but a seat for sale. Did you see the FIFA documentary?
Yes.
Exactly. Did you see, what's his name? Blatter. Not Blatter, sorry.
Isayatu.
Not Isayatu. I'm talking about the French guy, the French one, Platini. And his president selling their own vote for 80 billion development and selling weapons and big business. Do you see Africans? 1 million for their pocket. You understand?
Now, Seun, as we wrap up this interview, I mean, these elections will determine Nigeria's trajectory for the next 8 years, possibly next 4 years in the immediate future. What's your message to young Nigerians that are heading out to the polls in a few weeks' time?
Well, my message to young Nigerians is to stop treating their destiny and their election the way they treat their university exams and tests. You know, we've been conditioned as young Nigerians through this, our educational experience, you know, to not doing the work and finding a way. You know, so you have a lecturer in the university, you sort and gives you the required mark you need. If there's a lecturer that you cannot sort, who insists that you do the work, that's the bad lecturer. It's the one that nobody likes. It's the one that takes bribe and absorbs you of your responsibility. The time you should be studying and becoming an adult, you are using it to entrench yourself in childish things.
In the cold room.
Yeah, in the cold room. Unilagwe. You feel me? Because you get me? You know, young Nigerians should be more participatory in politics. They should not hand over their power to anybody, thinking, oh, this person will do the work. All I have to do is go and vote.
Or wait for 4 years.
Yes, all I have to do is go and vote.
You must politics.
We as Nigerians, young and old, must understand that we must organize for ourselves. We must do the work. That even though you want to even vote for somebody, you must do the work to know what you are voting for, to be a part of what you are voting for. That's the level we are in Nigerian politics right now. You know, so we are happy. You know, a lot of young Nigerians, you know, they are happy to support Obi, for example, because they've been told by the media who Obi is a part of. People forget he's a big-time publisher, or rather was before he became a full-time politician. You know, so he knows the game of propaganda, and you know, so he's able to sell himself as some kind of different from a change. The way Buhari sold himself to us as a change, you know, Obi has been the one to capture that narrative in this election. And young people, many of whom are not even members of the Labour Party, you know, just want to vote for him because they believe that rhetoric. Many young people want to vote for Asiwaju. Why? Because him also being able to afford a lot of propaganda has been able to sell to them that he's the one that built Lagos. And with this idea that he has built Lagos, he can build Nigeria. And you know, they all have all these stories that they've sold to the people. And now people have now negated their own power, thinking, oh, we don't need to do anything for ourselves. We need to organize. These people, they've suddenly changed, you know, and we're arguing which of them is better for us. When we know, everybody knows, you know, they are not. We must take power for ourselves.
They always say the argument between the devil and the deep blue sea, and it's devil and deep blue sea, but there's one more now.
You know, I think the problem with Africa is that we're always forced to choose between a rock and a hard place. You know, and it's time that we take our destiny out. I want us to understand, no president can save Nigeria. So that's why we must always look at that. That's also the criticism I give to Showore, and that's why I'm not in AAC. We cannot be looking at creating a president. One president surrounded by 36 PDP governors, APC governors, and APC PDP House of Rep, APC PDP Senate, what can this one president do? You know,
and if you're working against their interests,
exactly, they will sabotage you with all these their officers in power.
Yeah.
Any movement that is truly about the liberation of Nigeria will not be a one-man movement, that's for sure. Will not be a movement championing a demagogue of any sort. It will be a mass movement of the people. So every seat in every position in Nigeria will be contested by this movement, backed by the power of the people. You know, the presidency, the governors, the state assembly, the state executives, the national assemblies, everywhere will be a battlefront in the recapturing of our country. Because whether we like it or not, we are existing under state capture, where a few people have captured our state and used these resources for their own personal benefit. And we must understand that aspect. You know, so anybody chasing a presidential candidate that will come and change Nigeria is still living in the pipe dream. You know, it's the same criticism I had, you know, even though as close as I am to Showere. And that's why I love the guy. He doesn't mind criticism. He doesn't mind it. I'm one of his most critical people, and still yet, our friendship has not wavered. It has created a bond where we know we are honest to each other. You know, I also did not participate in revolution. Is it because I'm afraid of revolution? No, it's because I told him, we cannot do revolution on behalf of the people. Revolution is done with the people. We can't do revolution for the people.
It's organic.
Revolution is by the people. So until we have sown the seed, we cannot announce a revolution on behalf. You know, just the way we cannot create a presidency that comes as only the people of Nigeria. And until that kind of moment is built, and none of these oppressors want to build that kind of movement because it will remove their own power.
It's not in their interest. Finally,
exactly.
Final. Do you think MOP will be registered before the next electoral
cycle?
Yeah,
definitely.
Okay.
We are at the stage of registering right now. We are just taking a pause because we know that even INEC will not be able to do due diligence, and we won't even get any response. So we are taking this period to observe the elections, learn certain things as well, and also train our own officers to give more time for training. Then you never get too much training. And after the elections, I think we should put in our
So congratulations. Before I wrap up, congratulations. You've hit milestones. You've had your first kid in the last 40 years. You just turned 40 a few weeks ago. How does it feel? Are you feeling
I don't know. I'm just sleeping and tired all the time. This is what happens here.
Now waiting there. So you just have to take it easy. Seun Kuti, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
It's good to see you again.
I wish you all the best with your band. MOP, and
we have to hit the road together again.
Yes, we need to.
You know,
I had
make some more memories.
Time in Chile. All the best, brother. God
Thank
bless
you, man.
Cheers.